Thank you. All right, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our California Broadband Council meeting. Very good to see everyone, and I'm happy to also say that I'm not doing pulling a dual duty on the pandemic response and being the chair of this. I'm actually back, yay! Very looking forward for a very robust conversation today, because I think there's some really good updates that we're going to hear as the agenda has laid out. Maybe this is a way to let's make sure we have the quorum to get the meeting. So let's start with the roll call. Jewel?
Good afternoon, Ms. Tong.
Here.
Designee for President Badger, Ms. Hoke. I think I saw you, Darcy.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties with my mute button. Yes, I am here.
Thank you. Designee for Director Giudice, Mr. Mellon.
Pat Mellon's here.
Designee for Superintendent Thurman, Mr. Winkler.
Here.
Designee for Director Lasso, Mr. Jameson.
Present.
Designee for Secretary Kim, Ms. Pepper.
Here.
Ms. McPeak.
Here.
Ms. Ross.
Michael Flores for Ms. Secretary Ross.
Welcome, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Lucas.
I'm here.
Ms. Snyder.
Here.
Designee for Senator Hueso, Ms. Smith. She may have had a conflict. And designee for Assemblymember Gibson, Dr. Williams.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Joelle. All right, so before we officially start, I would like to take a moment to just welcome a couple of new members joining the California Broadband Council. Start off, I want to extend a warm welcome to Commissioner Hawk as the new CPUC member on the council, replacing Martha, and who has been a longtime champion of the Broadband Council, or just broadband in general. So welcome, Darcy, to this council. We also like to welcome new advisors, Amanda Martin, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Administration and Finance at the California Natural Resources Agency. And she's joining a group of our advisors such as Matthew and Robert C. And I think I might sing a few of them. I'm sure I'm going to miss few folks, and as well as Joy Sterling and Michael Berman from CSUS. Last time we invited or had the pleasure to have Michael join representing CSUS. So thank you, Amanda, for joining this advisory group. With so much going on, I like to also talk about, and perhaps this is something our Deputy Director of Broadband, Scott, would cover in his remark, that I'm sure you are aware that with the recent historic signature or release of a new budget, specifically on the middle mile initiatives, that also created a new middle mile advisory committee. Again, I'll leave it to Scott later on, talk about all the different initiative that's going on related to broadband. Obviously we have this Broadband Council, we see it as the big umbrella of everything going on. There was the executive order issued last year by Governor Newsom, followed by the action plan that this council have published at the end of the calendar year. And then the most recent initiative on middle miles, as well as last mile for CPUC. So again, stay tuned for more of that update from Scott. Today's agenda, we will have an update about the state budget related to broadband, as I just alluded to. And then we will hear updates from the state broadband digital literacy Deputy Director Scott on the further development on the action plan, as well as last week's tribal summit. And then we will have this council to be opened up for the public comment. I wanted to take a minute to ask if any council member have any items that you guys wanted to put on the agenda or want to make sure we have sufficient time allotted to before I hand it off to Scott for staff report. All right, seeing none. Scott, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thank you, Director Tong. I am going to, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Got it. Sorry about this. I've been using Teams so much. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about this. Well, I just want to reiterate Director Tong's comments about welcoming Commissioner Hope to the Broadband Council and Amanda from the Natural Resources to the Advisors Group. It's always critically important that there's so much work to be done and so many dimensions of the work of broadband that it's really great to have this symphony of voices and collective action working towards broadband. As Director Tong mentioned, that this body has historically done so much work in leading the charge on the broad issue of broadband in the state, and that was increasingly multiplied with COVID and the executive order and the development of the Broadband Action Plan. But we know that with the historic investments and support that the governor and the legislature have thrown at this issue, that we wanted to go over at a really high level what that means for us. So as far as the budget and related legislation, I know most of you by now know that $6 million have been allocated towards broadband in the state over the next 3 years, as it relates specifically to the Department of Technology and specifically the Office of Broadband. $3.25 billion was allocated to the state to build, operate, and maintain a statewide open access middle mile network. What we'd like you all to know is that the Department of Technology, the Department of Finance, the Public Utilities Commission, and Caltrans have all been earmarked or identified to play significant roles, in the implementation of the statewide network. CDT and the Office of Broadband and Digital Literacy, wanted to share with you just a little bit about our responsibilities, mainly around oversight in the acquisition and management of contracts for the middle mile, leveraging our subject matter expertise and where we sit in the ecosystem. The SB 156 had also ordered CDT and OBDL to retain a third-party administrator to really manage the design, construction, maintenance, and operation of the middle mile network. And as Director Tong had alluded to earlier, SB 156 also established ordered the creation of the Middle Mile Advisory Committee to oversee and advise, or to monitor and advise the third-party administrator with CDT and the Office of Broadband on the overall project. That advisory committee is laid out in statutes to include representative from the Department of Technology, the Public Utilities Commission, the Department of Finance, Caltrans, Government Operations, and then 2 ex officio members from both the Senate and Assembly, respectively. This is all moving very fast and fluid, and it's going to be done in an open and transparent way. We know that you all probably have a lot of questions, and wanted to let you know that by statute, we'd have to stand up the first Middle Mile Advisory Committee meeting. That is already calendared for August 18th, and we have stood up a Middle Mile Advisory Committee webpage. It's on the screen here. We'd be happy to share it with you. But as information becomes available, it'll be posted on that website, and that'll be a way to get real-time information about the Middle Mile network. That's all that I have to share at the moment from our perspective, but given the role that the PUC and Caltrans are going to play in this, I would like to turn over the screen to my colleague, Rob Osborne from the Public Utilities Commissioner, to talk about the budget and legislation and how it impacts their role in the broadband space. Rob?
Thank you, Scott. So as Scott mentioned, there's several components of the $6 billion budget. The statewide middle mile, which will be primarily under Department of Technology. The PUC will be providing the middle mile locations to Department of Technology. In statute, we have 90 days to do that, to solicit public comment and provide that to CDT. And that is already underway. The commission issued a scoping memo yesterday that incorporates the scope of the middle mile locations, as well as something later that I'll talk about called the federal funding account. So the middle mile section is the 3.2 billion. In addition to that, there is a new federal funding account created in legislation for $2 billion. And that money will be primarily coming from the ARPA funds. And that will be dedicated to essentially connecting the communities that are unserved to this middle mile network. And the middle mile network really started as connecting all the unserved census designated places across the state. So, it's really to serve those locations. Next is the Loan Loss Reserve Fund, which is essentially seed money for localities, municipalities, counties to raise financing. So the money is essentially used to raise financing, and with the intention of it being paid back. That is $750 million that will come from the general fund. Lastly, there's the technical assistance, which will be under the CSF program, the California Advanced Services Fund program. And that will be patterned similarly after what we have already in place for tribal technical assistance, only this will be available to non-tribes. That's $50 million coming from the ARPA accounts. Finally, some additional changes that came with the legislation are changes to CSF. So the eligibility for CSF has increased from 6 megabits per second down and 1 up to 25 megabits per second down and 3 up, as well as the deployment requirement is changing from 10 down, 1 up to 100 down, 20 up. And so I'm going to hand it over now to Elizabeth and Caltrans.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. So Caltrans's role in this is to help with the physical build out of the infrastructure. And so we're happy to report that working with CDT and CPUC in terms of once the locations have been identified, we are looking at identifying an implementation plan to hit some high priority areas as quickly as possible, have a full implementation plan to get this work delivered. And we will be completing shortly an agreement with CDT in order to talk about how the projects will be designed and constructed. Thank you.
Okay, Director Tong, that is the close of that item, unless there are we going to open it up for any comments from the members?
Yeah, let's do that. I think this is a hot topic. I'm sure folks have questions. So let's start with, let's just make sure we give a little bit of time to all of the council members. Are there any questions or comments they'd like to chime in before we move to the next item on the agenda, which is about the action plan. Man, our members are quite quiet today, huh?
Well, it's Greg Lucas. Sorry to interrupt. I had a quick question. So I just now went, I apologize, Rob, while you were talking, I went to the Middle Mile Advisory Committee webpage. And so I was looking for kind of an explanation for the bill itself is written so that the only entity that really qualifies to be the administrator of the Middle Mile is Scenic. And I'm wondering what the thinking was behind that. Or maybe there's another entity that can answer that question more easily.
I wasn't involved in those discussions, so I deferred to CDT.
Director Tong?
Yeah, Scott, so that's a good question, Greg. And I have to say that this is one of those legislative process that there's quite a bit of a consideration and negotiation that took place as part of the budget process. So I think these requirements were put in. I did see, Sunny, that you raised your hand. I assuming that you might have some, oh, no, this is something else. So let me just, so that is basically, it's part of the legislative process when the budget was reached an agreement to have a third-party administrators with certain criteria that was laid out.
Okay, I mean, is there a rationale? I mean, I get that it was part of the legislative process.
I wouldn't even pretend to speak to the rationale because I do know a lot of these were handled, you know, between the Department of Finance and the legislative branch for just, you know, anecdote that I'm hearing that I think it was really looking for a party that has experience, have demonstrated proven record in pulling, you know, a statewide network or network that are in the statewide scale. And I think that played a huge role into you know, the criteria that was set out in terms of finding that third party administrator.
Thank you. I mean, you know, I raise it in part because we work with Scenic to connect the state's libraries. There's work that still needs to be done with the community colleges as well as the K through 12. And, you know, there's about the 200 libraries that need to be connected still are some of the more difficult ones. And it's just, I mean, is our work going to get done at the same time while this new responsibility comes to Scenic? So that's why I asked the question, but thank you for your answer.
Yeah, got it. I think these are great questions. I think we're still trying to learn through and discover this. And that's why as we are preparing for the public meeting on the 18th, I think these are really good, valid comments to bring up, perhaps question to search for answers. All right, thank you, Greg. And Sunny?
I had a question raised by Cole Prisbla to Elizabeth regarding micro trenching. And his question is, will Caltrans be looking at micro trenching as part of an option for deployment? So Elizabeth, you might not only want to answer that, but give a really recent great example of State Route 67.
Thank you, Sunny. Yeah, this is a great opportunity for me to talk about that. State Route 67 is a perfect example of where we are micro trenching on that project. And Caltrans has developed draft specifications and plans for the use of micro trenching. And we are working on allowing micro trenching and looking at piloting projects just to test as we typically do when something fairly new is rolled out, to see the impacts and how the efforts and the methods can be improved over time. So yes, micro trenching is something that is available.
Could I, Chairman Tong and Elizabeth, just add on to elevate what is an extraordinary accomplishment by Caltrans, District 11 in the San Diego area, raised this issue with Sandag. Chris Schmidt, who was very active for a long, long time, along with the District 11 director, came to Sandag, Executive Director Asana Krata and his team, and in 6 weeks, they took what was a scheduled resurfacing project. The State Route 67 was going to be resurfaced. It was scheduled for that. Caltrans really has husbands those things through the process, and they took the risk of an additional time delay, went to Sandag. Sandag put up money, the County of San Diego put up money, and the California Transportation Commission, led by Hillary Norton, also allocated an additional collectively $7 million to do micro trenching, now to do it right. So I also want to hasten to add, for all of the industry here on the call, micro trenching can be done well, it can be done really poorly. And it makes a huge amount of difference. And unfortunately, I've had the opportunity to see both. And so to Cole's question, I think it's really commendable to Caltrans and the transportation entities, Lori, the agency, for looking at micro-trenching, but I also want to caution it has to be done well by industry, and there has to be fidelity in implementing the permitting. And by well, we mean you have to be deep enough. Do not try to avoid the roadbed itself to minimize impairment to the integrity of the roadbed, get into the right of way, and then have a good sealant that really prevents water leaking in as you go along with laying the fiber.
Thank you for that, Sunny. Any other wrap-up comment, Elizabeth, from you? Or I'm sure Lori is very happy to hear about the compliment to Caltrans from Cal State Agency.
I'll just say ditto to everything Sunny just said. She says it perfectly.
All right. Okay. Seeing there are no other questions specifically to the budget item, thank you for our presenters for that. Scott, let's move to the next agenda item, which is about a status update on the EO, as well as maybe just followed by the actual action plan.
Got it. Okay, so can everyone see my screen now?
Yes, Scott, we can see it.
Okay, thank you, Jules. Got it. Well, I think Sunny said, they're in highlighting Caltrans and the work that they're doing, that's one big example of just the entire catalog of work that's being done by the members of this body, our state partner agencies and departments and other stakeholders throughout the state to really make the deployment and adoption of broadband an urgent priority. For today's broadband and digital literacy report, what we really wanted to do is go over the project and schedule of work for the Broadband Council in 3 different areas. Number one, take a look at both the executive order and just outline the work that's been done on by different agencies, and then take a look at how that work maps up into the action plan, which was one of the primary goals of the executive order. Real briefly go over the short-term action item or action plan items, and then the long-term action plan items. So as I mentioned, the executive order items, in dealing with so many of the council members and other agencies, you know how committed you are to doing the work of broadband, how hard you've worked on doing that. And it's a little difficult to keep track of. Is the executive order work complete? And now we're working on the action plan items. So we put together this chart to map out and show for the council and the public, both the work that's been done, a description of the work that's been done, who the lead are, what the progress is, and what action plan item it maps to. And there's a lot of words on the screen, so I don't want to read it all. But I do want to go over this real quickly and just point out that, of the 15 action items, if we start with item 1, the entire Broadband Council's in the lead. This discussion of speeds is in progress, and it's been wrapped up into the action plan item number 1. Executive Order 2, the action plan that is complete, and it corresponds to all action plan items. Item number 3 on data and mapping, CPUC is taking the lead on that. A lot of us are collaborating with them. That is in progress and ongoing and is rolled up into action plan item number 19. Item 4, convening private sector companies. That's something that Department of Technology, General Service, and GoBiz are working on. That's in progress. It's rolled up into action item 6. Executive Order item 5, state and federal cataloging state and federal funding opportunities. GoBiz is working on that. The first phase is complete, but that is also rolled up in action item number 2, because that's going to be an ongoing process, and I'll share with you later how we're looking to feature that work on one of CDT's items. On Executive Order item 6, the state contracting and procurement. Again, that's a Department of Technology and General Services collaboration. That's in progress and ongoing and rolled up into action plan item 14. Item number 7 is the installation of conduit and fiber into all appropriate and feasible transportation projects. Caltrans taking the lead on that, in progress, rolled up into item number 4. Executive Order item 8, using state programs to accelerate broadband deployment. CPUC is leading that. It's in progress, rolled up into action plan item 23C. And again, bear with me, I know this is a lot, but we felt that this would be an informative exercise for everyone to track what work we're doing. So just real quickly, I'll finish this out. Item number 9, the inventory of state properties. Department of General Services is taking the lead on that in collaboration with CDT, CPUC, and Caltrans. That's in progress, rolled up into action plan item 7. Number 10, OES is leading the coordination with jurisdictions on implementation of Next Gen 911. That's rolled up into action plan item 8. Executive Order item 11, facilitate new broadband projects that support precision ag. CDFA was the lead, they still are. It's in progress and rolled up into action plan item 23D. Executive Order item 12 is the CPUC, or no, I'm sorry, it's HCD, the Housing and Community Development, providing recommendations to CPUC to increase free or low-cost broadband in publicly subsidized housing communities. They've done a ton of great work on the action order item, continue to do so, and there will be monitored in action plan item 13. Executive Order item 13, GoBiz is leading that, coordinate outreach efforts of existing statewide programs and institutions. That's going to be, it's in progress, it's ongoing, and wrapped up into action plan item 23, which is fairly extensive. It has, I think, 4 or 5 different sub-bullets that are mentioned here in this graph, specifically on the next one, because for item 14, the Department of Education, which has worked incredibly hard, both historically and during COVID, they've been leading the statewide efforts to ensure that students have computing devices and connectivity. Again, that's ongoing on an almost daily basis and rolled up into action plan item number 23. And lastly, Executive Order item 15, analyzing the needs of people ages 60 and older as it relates to a whole host of broadband related issues. Mark Beckley and the Department of Aging have done great work on and made progress on the executive order item, and will continue to do so as this is wrapped up into action plan item number 15. I'll pause there so I can take a breath and you all can. I just want to underscore that, our intention here was to try to provide clarity and bring before all of you all the tremendous work that has already been done on the executive order, and how, this work will continue on as we monitor the action plan. I see Sunny has a question. I'd be happy to answer it for you.
Thanks, Scott. So related to the item 13, outreach on affordable offers and meeting with ISPs, as of August 1st, the latest information from the FCC on the registrations with the FCC, with USAC for the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program is nationwide 4,175,345. So 4.17 million nationwide. That includes 2% are tribal residents from tribal lands. And then in California, it's 521,283, which translates to 12.5% of the nationwide registrations come from California. I flag that because we're 13% of the population and 15% of all low-income residents in the nation live in California. So we're behind in getting our fair share for Californians. What is the plan to step up the promotion, the notification, the advertising, the distribution of information through counties or other who have CalFresh as an example, or through the school districts to those students who qualify for the National School Lunch Program? How are we going to step up that effort to get California's fair share to at least sign up? Because that's the way we register the need for low-income households to have affordable broadband nationwide. That's it. That's the opportunity right now.
Got it. Well, thank you very much for bringing that up. I know you're such you and both CTF have been such important players and champions of broadband adoption in the state. I would note that that 12.5% number, I think it's a little higher than the last time we spoke when it was somewhere in the 11s. But definitely get your point. We want to do everything we can to get our make sure that California utilizes the program to get its fair share. As we know, several entities on the Broadband Council, including CTF, the Department of Education, the libraries have done extensive outreach on EBB, so have other entities here. I think to answer your question, Sunny, that I'll get together with staff and we'll put together a meeting, I think, to talk more broadly about broadband adoption and huddle together to see what, if anything, more we can do on EBB.
That'd be great. That's terrific. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, it looks like there's some, as I'm presenting, I can't see the chats.
Yeah, I think, let me do a little bit of procedure. I think it's fine for the public to, you have a question, put it on the chat, and, if somebody can respond, feel free, but the public comment period, we can open up towards the end. So we have we can, allow a concentrated time for that. This time is reserved for our council members to ask questions, so we can move quickly over the agenda. But please do feel free to put a question on the chat so we can get to it, through that channel as well.
Great. Thank you, Director Tong, for providing that clarification for folks. And given we have so much to cover today, I'd like to proceed with the next portion here, and that is just, on the, now that we've talked about how the executive order items map out into the action plan, those executive order items were reported on at the last meeting. Today's meeting is really to focus on short-term action plan items. You'll all be hearing progress reports from the CPUC on action item 1, 9, 11, 17, 19, 20, and 22, from GoBiz on item number 2, from CTA on item number 4 and 5, from CDT on items number 6 and 21, from the Office of Emergency Services on item 8, and the Department of Aging on item 15. Lastly, I wanted to, on our update, just say that the long-term action items that are very critical, there is significant work being done on those, so they're in progress. We anticipate having reports on some or all of those at the next council meeting, and I wanted to flag for the council members and any partner departments or agencies that we have is that you'll be getting some communication from my office about action item 24, which is to encourage all executive branch agencies and departments and suggest constitutional agencies incorporate broadband into their strategic plans. So we'll be sending out some kind of a form for you to fill out so that we compile all this and report out to the Broadband Council by year's end per the action plan report. So Director Tong, that is it for my update.
Great, thank you, Scott. Any other questions specifically for Scott from the council member? Seeing none, let's go ahead and move forward with the action plan specific item update. Scott, why don't you go ahead and call up the presenters?
Got it. Yeah, so I believe Rob Osborne, CPUC, is first up. Rob?
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to try and share screens here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think it's clear from the discussion or the presentation so far that SB 156 and the trailer bill language and the budget is all critical to the action plan. And I'll get into that a little bit, but just to go through some of the items that we have, I'll be reporting on. First is action plan item 1, which is recommend and adopt shared standards among all state grant funding and related broadband programs. That includes defining broadband with dual definitions, mitigating the problems with federal data, developing criteria for state funding around demonstrated local and tribal government involvement that align with such criteria for federal broadband funding, and prioritize funding. So with regard to actions, the PC, as Scott has said, has been very involved with CDT and Caltrans and Department of Finance and putting together some of the requirements, and SB 156 updated the statutory speed requirements for the California Met Services Fund infrastructure account definition. So as I said earlier, it was 6.1, it's now 25.3 with regard to determining eligibility, and then deployment requirement is now 100 down, 20 up or greater. Second thing, we continue to mitigate problems with the federal data, and that includes federal data showing areas as served when they're in fact not, based on provider either error or overstatement with regard to where broadband is actually deployed. We are doing that through a validation process that includes looking at subscriber data at the census block level. But as we all know, the census block sort of approach, I think, has had its day, and we're now looking to follow what the FCC is doing with the Digital Opportunity Data Collection (DODC) effort, which is to get down to the actual location, and that involves looking at a location fabric. Third, an implementation of SB 156 will consider criteria for state funding around demonstrated local and tribal government involvement, which, so in a nutshell, it won't be just state funding or federal funding, but also we're looking to encourage involvement from a financial perspective from localities. And then finally, SB 156 included provisions on open access middle mile infrastructure. Action item 9, establish standards for middle mile and backhaul resilience and reliability. So in our ongoing consultation with Department of Technology and other agencies to implement SB 156 and statewide middle mile, including network resiliency considerations. And just a little more about this, when we put together this middle mile proposal, as I said earlier, we're connecting the census designated places with unserved households. And another aim was to provide 2 ways out of each county. So that is something that we considered in putting this together using the state highway system. Secondly, the decisions adopting wireline and wireless resiliency standards. We have decisions now at the PUC for those, decision 2102-029 for wireline and 2007-011 for wireless resiliency requirements. Action plan item 11. So within the scope of the PUC's current proceeding, develop a framework to define essential broadband service affordability standards, evaluate those standards relative to other essential service costs, and develop a range of metrics to provide a comprehensive assessment of households' ability to afford essential broadband service. So we have a proceeding right now that is ongoing that is examining affordability from a range of perspectives, looking at electricity, looking at water, looking at communication services. And to that end, we have defined a standard for, or we're in the process of having that defined. That is now, we've used that standard for an evaluation of the different parts of California based on affordability, and we've come up with a metric using an index. And more details are included in the affordability report, which I referenced below. It was published in April of this year. And the affordability metrics, I'm sorry to correct myself, they have been adopted. So that is CPC decision 2007-032. And we'll send these slides out later so you can go to these links. Action plan item 17, provide guidance to local governments and partner with tribal governments to develop broadband strategies and explore options for increasing competition in their communities. So we've done a lot in this area. CSF has funded 2 projects with 3 tribes, the Klamath River Rural Broadband Initiative, otherwise known as Kirby, has CSF and USDA funded funds going into building broadband, and that's a partnership between the Yurok and Karuk tribes. And then separately, the commission approved a grant for the Hoopa Valley Broadband Initiative, and that's a partnership between Hoopa Valley, the Public Utility District, and Hunter Communications. We also engaged tribes in hosting 3 emergency broadband benefit webinars, along with NTIA tribal connectivity. And I think those were very helpful in not only providing information to tribes in California, but also providing further connections with the FCC and the NTIA. And then we, in a very short amount of time, and so whenever I hear that the PUC is slow, I would raise this as one example of where that's not the case. We stood up a brand new program for tribal technical assistance in the CSF program in a matter of months, and that is up and going. It's successful. I will point to that later in item 22. We also have a pilot project to support tribal leaders in Northwest California. I'm not sure if any of you know Karen Eckersley, but she's physically in the Northwest part of the state, working with tribes up there and helping them close the digital divide and assist them in other communications areas. Karen also was pretty helpful, actually I should say instrumental in helping organize and work with other tribal leaders in getting the word out about the FCC's education broadband spectrum licenses, or education broadband service licenses. These are 2.5 gigahertz wireless licenses that are worth a lot of money. I think after the tribal window closed, I think a number of these licenses were sold off for hundreds of millions of dollars. The spectrum was made available to tribes that applied and were granted the spectrum. So that is another resource that is available for tribal broadband. Action plan item 19 is to collect more granular and more accurate broadband data and leverage this information to build out the California Interactive Broadband Map. So the PUC, there are provisions in SB 156 that consider state and federal mapping, and this is somewhat related to action item 1, where I talked about the location broadband fabric. Action item number 20 is to leverage the PUC cost model to inform broadband planning and investments, project broadband availability based on existing resources, and inform statewide discussions of additional resources required to achieve our broadband goals. So the 2021 budget reflects the data-driven California broadband cost model analysis. That was the basis back, when we put this together last year. And the cost model is a very important tool. It can be very helpful, and it can inform the implementation of the broadband middle mile and last mile efforts. So we expect that we will continue to use the cost model, refine it, and apply it as we start to implement SB 156. Action plan item 22 is to identify additional opportunities to provide technical assistance to local governments, tribes, nonprofits, and their partners to best leverage local, state, federal, and private funding opportunities. And this is, as I said earlier, related to action plan item 17. The Tribal Technical Assistance Program that we stood up in a short amount of time has already funded 14 tribes with 26 projects to date. And these are projects of varying scope, but the main focus is to provide expertise to tribes that don't have it, so that they can put together their projects, their broadband project plans, and hopefully get funding to make those happen. So the applications are evaluated 4 times per year. And and then finally, SB 156 PU Code Section 281B5 added provisions on the provision of technical assistance to local government. So as I said earlier in my summary of the budget bill, there is $50 million set aside for technical assistance, and we are, we have this model already for the tribal technical assistance that we plan to, leverage for the non-tribal. And that's it from me, Scott. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Rob. CPUC definitely has a full plate, and I really appreciate you sharing the details of the hard work that you are doing over there. So kudos. And let's go to our next presenter now. It's going to be kind of from the GoBiz, kind of. I think you're on mute.
Double muted myself, sorry about that. Thank you very much. So Kaina Pereira from the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development on action item number 2, identify alternative financing opportunities with government and philanthropic partners to maximize funding for new infrastructure. As Scott mentioned earlier, under the proviso of the executive order, we did the initial exploration for federal funding and state funding opportunities. That is continuing. This last week, there were 6 different NOFOs released by EDA on the federal side, and we're currently looking through those to see what align directly with broadband style initiatives. It looks like all of them have a provision which does allow for use in some capacity. And so we're basically going to go through with EDA to try and delineate how each of the communities could go after these funds and in which directives, whether they be on the action plan derivation or whether they be project oriented. They're the 6 different NOFOs, and it's maybe I should just share my screen really quick. All right, so they are in different sectors, and as such, they're going to have different requirements and different reporting. And so I'm going to actually skip the travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation one for this portion, because it's really one which is going to be well more defined in a later set, and that one is going to be expected to be done in the March timeframe of 2022. The earliest one that we're going to be getting is what is going to be a pre-planning grant. It is a by invitation state designated entity grant, of which we are currently in discussions with Department of Finance on $1 million that will be given to GoBiz for the acceleration of what is anything related to economic development and job creation platforms that utilize this funding. So broadband is something that can be incorporated in this, and we're still trying to figure out exactly how. The second one, which is in yellow, is the Build Back Better Regional Challenge. This one is going to be the most directly tied to project-oriented actions within the community. So this is where you could say resilience and having a backbone where you can provide, consistent broadband coverage is going to allow for resilience amongst our education and amongst our hospitals in those territories as well. By tying it also to businesses, small businesses who affect those or have indirect or induced impacts to those same industries or those same territories, that's how we can unlock the funds for these jurisdictions. So it does have to have a business element, but there is a lot of flexibility in the writing. The economic adjustment assistance, which is the fourth category, this is mainly planning. There are construction and non-construction elements. This is your typical EDA grant. So there have been broadband projects funded under this, and there have been broadband plans funded under this previously. So this will probably be another eligible rolling application, which we'll be sending out to our partner communities as they finish their action plans and are going after federal funds. The next one is related specifically to Indigenous communities. And so I'll be talking to Matt about that, and Christina and a few others. And then finally, the Good Job Challenge, which does have some connectivity if there is a capacity lack on the workforce development or the training facilities in terms of their coverage primarily. So there could be a bunch of different opportunities depending on where the different communities are in their current schema. And as such, we're still doing the surveys, and we have, I think, over 100 responses, and we'll be continuing to send those out to try and get as much detailed information on where the readiness of each of our communities are. That is my report for now.
Great. Thank you so much, Kana. It's been great working with you and your team. You guys are, I want to say you're one of the hardest working agencies in state government, but I think that applies to just about everyone on this council. But excellent work. Next up is Elizabeth Dewar to talk about action plan item 4 and 5.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So I just want to say to Scott, that was an excellent summary you did of the executive order. It's nice to see it all in a spreadsheet where it can be broken down. And as you said, under executive order, item number 7 is action plan item number 4. And item number 4 is to implement a Dig Smart policy to install conduit as part of any appropriate and feasible state-funded transportation project in strategic corridors. And that's as an incentive for service build-outs to unconnected and underconnected communities. So as is mentioned in the action plan, and as we're aware, Dig Smart policies present an opportunity to lower the capital cost of infrastructure deployment and minimize the disruptions caused by ongoing or duplicitous construction, which both incentivizes and expedites new investment. So Caltrans is developing an official Dig Smart policy, which will be finalized later this year. As Director Tong mentioned at the opening of the meeting, we also now have the Broadband Middle Mile Network Initiative. And so we're looking at our policy as well, just to ensure that it fits in with the efforts as laid out under the Broadband Middle Mile Network Initiative. So we want to make sure that they're congruent. And then as previously reported, Caltrans is continuing to identify transportation projects in which conduit for broadband can be added. Again, specifically or particularly in unconnected and underconnected areas we are looking at all of our projects and then looking at prioritizing. So that also fits in line with the Middle Mile Initiative. And so we'll be looking at all of those projects as well. In terms of action item number 5, that is to continue improving the state encroachment permitting processes and rights of way management to accelerate the broadband deployment projects that will serve the unconnected and underconnected communities. Caltrans completed a Lean Six Sigma streamlining effort on our encroachment permitting process. And so that has helped to improve how our permits are processed, and it's streamlined the time that it takes to issue permits. And we are continuing to work closely with service providers on projects that are expanding broadband access for all. So wherever we can help out, we've been in touch with those service providers. And that's my report. Thank you, Scott and Director Tong.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Great work. And thank you for all of the updates and collaboration we've had in our check-ins, and for you and Lori agreeing to add me into your annual or semi-annual meetings with the providers on permitting issues. Really appreciate that. Next up, I am going to present on items number 6 and 21. I'm going to pull my slides back up. Can everyone see these?
Yes, they're visible.
Okay, thanks, Jules. So action plan item 6 is to explore various actions enhancing permitting processes at all levels of government through meaningful partnerships. So the progress, So progress to date is, as I mentioned, is part of our work monitoring, supporting the implementation of the Broadband Action Plan. We've been meeting with Caltrans and just, getting updates from them on the work they're doing on encroachment, permitting, and rights of way. Another interesting collaboration is with GoBiz, really discussing the possibility, or they're leading a conversation about the possibility of applying the same approach they did on the zero emissions vehicle permitting Olympics process to broadband, and to really, create a new approach to how local cities and counties approach broadband permitting, because going to be critically important to both the construction of the middle mile network, but also making sure that when that middle mile gets there, or prior to that, that local cities and counties have expeditious processes to get the last mile services up and running. The last piece I would mention is that with the federal government, we're in conversations with various federal government agencies, really trying to figure out how to establish a working group with them to expedite or deal with permitting issues as it relates to broadband on federal lands. And I'd say broadband infrastructure deployment on federal lands. Our next steps are going to be to continue working with GoBiz on local permitting, to establish the semi-annual convening with service providers and local governments, to discuss how to continue to improve that, and then just the ongoing conversation with the federal government to establish some kind of a working group. The next action plan item is number 21, and that relates to the establishment of a Broadband for All portal. It's really to serve as a central repository for broadband information for a variety of stakeholders. And as you can see, the sub-bullets here, it's to create a page to submit data to validators, dispute broadband mapping data related to speeds and availability, to catalog toolkits and resources specific to broadband planning and implementation, digital inclusion plans and initiatives, digital skills training and tools, information on affordable internet offers and devices, and state and federal funding opportunities. The progress to date is we've worked with our Office of our OET, Office of Enterprise Technology, created with an alpha pilot to give really help us map out the architecture and what we want the web portal to do. We've engaged in conversations with CPUC about integrating their speed test, both for wireline and wireless, in their mapping function, so that the California Interactive Broadband Map has is embedded into the portal. Wanted to give you all a brief screenshot. This is really, it's an alpha. We're designed it, at least preliminarily, to correspond to the look and feel of the Broadband Council. And this is by no means done from an aesthetic standpoint, but this is a snapshot of the homepage. Here is, as you can see, is a table of contents, just a draft one corresponding to the action plan item. And I'll show you a sample of another page. Again, this is not functional, it's a visual representation, but we envision that would include the speed test and for both wireline and wireless. And more to come on that. We are going to encourage and really ask for collaboration from both the Broadband Council members, partner government agencies at all levels, and outside stakeholders to help us populate this portal. It's important to note that we don't want to recreate the wheel. We know that a lot of this information already exists out there. We just want to use the portal in the spirit of what the action plan intended, and to have it be really a central repository for California broadband stakeholders. And that's it for me. Next up, I am going to pass it over to Patrick Mellon from the Office of Emergency Services.
Okay, well, good afternoon. So our action plan item was number 8, which is to regularly coordinate and convene jurisdictions implementing next generation 911 to expand broadband infrastructure to enhance public safety and disaster preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation capabilities. I don't know if I can share my screen or not, but let me try.
Yeah, Scott, looks like your screen might be stuck, or I don't know if it's just me.
Oh, there you go.
Ah.
Stop share. Sorry, Patrick.
All right, let me see. No.
And while Patrick is getting ready, I just want to let the council member know, after OES, we have one more update from Department of Aging, and then we can open up for a council member for any questions or comments to the presenters.
Okay, can you see my screen now? Or
Yes, we can.
does it show action item 8? Because I've got 2 screens up. So
It does.
It does.
Okay. Moving on to our status. For those of you that don't know, Cal OES is in the process of implementing next generation 911, which is a significant step forward in the delivery of emergency calls to our public safety answering points. Part of the basis for next generation 911 is to move it to an IP based, and we need to ensure resiliency of the 911 system by providing multiple paths of communications into the public safety answering points. One of our main areas of connection to the PSAPs is via broadband. So our goal is to actually have multiple paths of broadband, so a minimum of 2, perhaps to as many as 4 internet service providers into each of the public safety answering points. So we've been working with the IP service providers to ensure the connectivity into each of the 440 or so PSAPs. We've had some luck with some of the larger carriers. to provide connectivity into that. However, in some cases, the surrounding communities, particularly the more rural broadband, the more rural public safety answering points, don't have the customer base that provides them any kind of return on investment. So there's a reluctance to provide connectivity. At this point, we have about 20 PSAPs out of the 440 that do not have broadband available, and we're providing connection either through cellular connectivity or we're looking actually to microwave connectivity. So I guess our position is as far as possible next steps would be to provide some kind of a funding incentive to these internet service providers to at least offset part of the cost of doing the broadband installation into those. And I'm not sure of the funding sources that we can leverage or to what extent, but I think that would also give us a little bit of leverage in saying, you know what, you need to put this in and we'll help defray some of the costs. The last item I have is last week, leadership at our 911 branch attended the National Emergency Number Association. The good news there is that they were recognized with a recognition from the NEDA president for the steps that California has taken in promoting next generation 911, including the installation of broadband into some of the more rural communities. And our efforts are progressing. Any questions?
Thank you, Patrick. We're gonna take question from the council member altogether with, I think, just one more presentation to go. Scott, you want to call out the
Yeah,
final-
absolutely. And thank you, Patrick, for that update. Important work that you're doing over at OES. I'd like to call on Mark Beckley from the California Department of Aging to give an update on item number 15.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. I am going to share my screen. So my name is Mark Beckley. I am the Chief Deputy Director for the California Department of Aging. And we have action item number 15, which is to analyze the needs of older adults 60 plus for their broadband needs, as well as to implement strategies to bridge the digital divide for older adults. So at the last council meeting, I reported out our research, which is approximately 2 million older adults are or underconnected to the internet in California. So our key strategy is really to continue to deploy digital devices to help bridge that gap, as well as to promote low-cost broadband plans that they can sign up for so that they can get connected. Okay, so a key initiative that we have underway right now is what we call our tablet pilot. So with federal CARES Act funding, we purchased 4,000 iPad tablets to older adults who live alone and who are low income in order to combat loneliness and isolation. As we know, during the pandemic and still today, we have a number of older adults who experience, feelings of loneliness and isolation when they're at the under stay-at-home orders, but also just, it's the experience of several of us as we get older. So we have partnered with USC to create an evaluation tool to measure the effectiveness of deploying digital devices to older adults to help them get better connected and engaged in their communities and reduce feelings of loneliness and isolation. So those survey tools have been completed. We're in the process right now of securing a vendor to deploy the survey to tablet recipients. And then after a 6-month period, we'll do an evaluation to see what the effects of the tablets have been. The other key component of the project is to secure a digital literacy and education vendor or vendors to provide training to the recipients to make sure that they know how to set up their devices, effectively use them, and use them specifically for social connection and engagement purposes. So this is all new territory to us, but we're very relieved to find several vendors who have lots of experience in providing training and education specifically to older adults. And we hope to get some grants in place pretty soon with a vendor or with multiple vendors to provide this training. And then our goal is to deploy the tablets to the recipients by October. So we have a contract with AT&T that secured the 4,000 tablets, and they're in the process of deploying those out to our local area agencies on aging, who will then provide them to participants in their jurisdictions. All right, the other key update that I want to provide is that the budget provided us with additional money to do some additional digital device deployments. So specifically for CDA, we received $17 million to purchase additional devices, service plans, and training for older adults. And we'll be collaborating really closely with CDT in terms of securing vendors and securing, best cost devices and plans so that we can continue our digital divide efforts. Also included in the budget is $50 million. This was money that's been designated for the Child Welfare Directors Association to distribute. And so CDA is going to be partnering with CWDA to undertake this project. Given the experience we've had with doing our 4,000 pad deployment, we're now going to scale up and assist them with purchasing devices, service plans, as well as training for the individuals that they identified to receive these devices. These devices aren't specifically targeted to older adults, although older adults will be part of their target population, but it's really adults in general that they service through their programs, as well as individuals with disabilities. So we really look forward to that partnership. And then final item is we're currently in the process, we will be recruiting for a new position that we received in the budget, which is a digital divide project lead. CDA up until now hasn't had a designated position to lead our digital divide efforts. It's been kind of a team approach up until this point, so we're really happy to finally get some strong leadership in this field so that we can continue to make progress on action item 15 and continue to expand digital technology to older adults throughout California. And that's my report.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark, for all the hard work that you and CDA are doing on this issue. It's again, it goes, it's the same I've said with the other partners. It's an absolute pleasure to collaborate with you folks on this important work. And I'm really glad to see that you've gotten some additional support in the form of, specialists to come in and help you focus even more on this important work. So Director Tong, I'll turn it back to you.
I thank you so much for all of the presenters, Rob and Kaina and Elizabeth and Patrick and Mark, in addition to Scott. I don't know about rest of the council member, but just hearing all of this tremendous progress, especially, the last one, Mark, by, capping it with the Department of Aging, have gotten further investment, to help with the closing the digital divide, not only assisting with the healthy aging, but also with the disability community and working with locals. There's just really, really heartwarming. And of course, that is, riding on all the emergency service response. Patrick, great congratulations on the 911 next generation recognition, and then also Elizabeth for continued partnership on the Caltrans. Kind of great progress on, and thank you guys for, carrying that leadership and looking at additional funding opportunity. We could always use more. And then, Rob, I just want to echo Scott's comment on how much is on CPUC's plate. My goodness. But I just, wanted to open up to the council members to have, if they have any questions or comments to this report on the action plan. Anybody like to chime in, council members? Oh, all right, Sunny. You can always count on Sunny.
I put it in chat. So Mark, thank you for that report. My question in chat is on the digital literacy training for the 4,000 Californians receiving the device. Have you reached out to any of the really experienced nonprofit organizations who do train a lot of people, including older Californians, people with disabilities? Just wondering what that opportunity is that we could direct them so that they have an opportunity to submit a proposal.
Yeah, thank you, Sunny. Yeah, we have reached out to a number of different organizations, and if you or any other members of the council or anybody on this call have any additional suggestions, we'd love to hear them. So we've met with OATS, Cyber Seniors, the Community Tech Network, as well as OASIS. So those are the folks that we've talked to so far.
Certainly the California Foundation of Independent Living Centers is very experienced in assisting all population segments, but including seniors and those with disabilities. And there are a few others that have experience throughout California.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I forgot to mention, we have talked to Christina Mills, and yeah, she's been able to provide us with a lot of good help.
Good. Okay. Terrific. And WID, the World Institute on Disability. So both I would actually suggest and thank you.
Yeah.
And I do think we should revisit the definition of what is older.
Thank you, Sunny, for that. Any other questions or comments from the council member?
No questions, just a comment, really just absorbing all of the reports and wanted to commend all of you on tremendous work. We've been reflecting over the year, and it's, along with the allocations, of unprecedented dollars, there's just so much work to do, and just really appreciative of all of you kind of digging in. Those reports were really helpful, at least for me, to see how all of it's going to get done. So looking forward to your updates, and of course, obviously, any assistance we can provide, we will.
Thank you, Dr. Williams, for that. Anybody else?
Director Tong, this is Scott. I'm not a member, but I did want to just make a comment, because while we've highlighted a significant amount of work by the Broadband Council members today, it's really just a function of time and space that we couldn't feature all of the entities on the council and partners that are working in this space. And we had to make a judgment to focus on the short-term items this time and the long-term items. But I just want to call out that because the work wasn't featured today doesn't mean it's not getting done. And so DGS, Brent Jameson, Jason Kinney and his team over there are doing incredible work on an ongoing basis that's going to support the work of the council and the middle mile. We got Jeff and the folks at Department of Education, Sunny and her team at CETF are really working hard. The folks at Housing and Community Development, CDFA, it goes on. So just really commend the work of the folks who presented today, but also want to acknowledge the work of those that are continuing to work and whose work wasn't quite featured today.
Excellent call out, Scott. And yeah, I think you just give all of us a teaser of what are the material to come at our next Broadband Council meeting. I think it's probably sometime in October, but very much looking forward to even more updates. I just to say, thank you guys for the tremendous progress. And despite, there has been so much focus on the pandemic side of things, and you all just, I was very, very moved by all the progress that you guys are all making. Just thank you so much. All right, are there any other comments or questions from the council member before we move to the next agenda item? All right, I guess really quiet group today. My goodness. All right. Well, then I think we have one more agenda item. It's also very, very exciting and important, and we want to make sure we give Christina Snyder, the Governor's Tribal Advisor, time to present that before we open up for public comment. Christina.
Thank you. And I think folks are quiet because you picked an after lunch time, and then you gave me the sleepiest time to present. So I'll try to be brief because I may fall asleep in a second. Just kidding. But so before I start, I did want to give a shout out to Matt and Scott and Fasheen. I don't know if he's on or watching, and Rob and and Commissioner Hoke, all of the other folks that were involved in making last Friday happen on a very short time frame. For those of you that were not there, we had our inaugural, and I say inaugural because we're planning on doing it again, Scott, if you're still here, and our inaugural Tribal Partnership Connectivity Summit. And really the goal of the summit, we have other summits in different contexts. We have over at the Energy Commission, there's an annual consultation summit that's mostly, state agencies having discussions with tribes and tribal representatives for updates on energy development on Indian lands. We have a Tribal Nations conference that some of you come to every year where we talk directly to tribal chairs to see what their priorities are so that we can frame our priorities for the next year. And this is the first time we've done a broadband summit, both with this scale and with this level of participation across jurisdictions, which was just a major thing. So really want to thank everybody who was involved, and especially Matt, who brought this up as being something that we should and could do, I think really catalyzed this event. So I want to thank all of you. Just for some context, we're at I'm not going to say pretty because there's not even there's not even grades of it. We're in an unprecedented time of opportunity for tribal governments throughout the nation. Since its inception, tribal governments have been critically underfunded in everything, even though there is a federal trust responsibility in perpetuity to maintain quality of life for, I guess they don't say how good of quality of life, but quality of life for tribal nations. And so over the past year with COVID, a lot of tribes were struggling really a lot to be able to engage with the processes that we had in place. Several tribes lack connectivity. Several tribes, the way they do business is in person. Several tribes just were strained for capacity to engage with state, federal, and each other. And so over this last year, tribes really put a lot of effort into making sure they were at the table when negotiations happened under the first CARES package and have not left that table. So we're seeing unprecedented amounts of investments in tribal communities for infrastructure development, for healthcare, for broadband, which is infrastructure, but for pretty much everything across the board. And we're also seeing just historic levels of tribal appointments in positions that matter. And then also seeing a lot of California presence over in DC advocacy in ways that I think has been present but less coordinated in the past. So what that's resulted in is we now have $1 billion in a tribal connectivity program at NTIA, which has a September 1 deadline. Part of the catalyst for this conference was to make sure that tribes of varying levels of capacity knew how to apply for that and were able to navigate that properly if they didn't have any technical assistance or didn't have folks that were dedicated to writing grants or engaging with the federal government on a regular basis. Where we are incredibly lucky is that the lead at NTIA right now is actually a former California Native Council person, so former elected official from La Jolla tribe down in San Diego, and so has put a lot of energy into making sure California tribes know how to navigate this process and are at the table. For also more context, $1 billion is not a lot for 574 federally recognized tribes. And for context, in California, our tribes are critically underfunded most of the time because of how the history played out here and how fractionated and how tiny the tribal lands are here. So when you're comparing, you know, one tribe has 5 acres in trust and that's their entire tribal land versus Navajo that has over 17 million acres in trust, you're looking at some different kinds of assessments that are happening there, and you're also looking at different critical needs. So for us, it was really essential that we had this kind of information sharing, resource sharing for tribes that maybe wouldn't know what's available or also might not be able to get in under those timelines. We also had the feds present on a couple of different things. So CARES funding that could be leveraged for these kinds of opportunities. And then also we had our state folks that I shouted out to earlier present on some of the new budget items that can also be leveraged and also help to address the California specific needs. So, you know, let's say you have 5 acres, but you also have a ton of land to even get to the edge of the reservation where you might want to build out. Our funding in California should be able to help address those needs. So, you know, really, I think we met a lot of our goals in making sure that tribes knew who they could contact. So they have the direct contact information of the people who are leading all of these programs and initiatives for technical assistance. And then they also were able to get a lot of these resources in a consolidated place. And so I got distracted by chat, sorry. The conference itself was recorded and should be made available for folks who do want to follow along and do want to take a look and were unable to attend. Really, again, a lot of what our focus was here are the people you need to talk to if you need help getting these resources. Here are the resources available. And here are all the other things that you might want to think about when you're planning for development. So, you know, permitting processes, planning your community in general. How are you going to work with the local community to make sure that you're, you know, meeting the needs of your future building as well. So I think I took over 5 minutes. So I do want to stop at this point, but I think just for everyone, we got a lot of really wonderful feedback that I think right now, especially given the reopening of the state and a lot of convenings that are kind of happening all at the same time and people feeling like they're being pulled in a lot of different directions, that folks were really grateful for the timing of this and the format of it so that they could go back and look through materials and be able to have those contacts as well. So really, really proud of this team. Really proud. Also, GoBiz, I forgot, who basically did all of the work. Really, really happy with how things went. And I think that that the conference itself provided real value at a time when tribes are kind of on the clock to get access to these resources. So I do want to stop and see if Matt, Commissioner Houck, Scott, anyone else who was there want to have any thoughts or anything. Commissioner?
Yeah, I just wanted to commend you for putting on a really great conference. I think there was really good turnout, and it was great for me to hear firsthand from tribal leaders how they were taking advantages of some of the new programs at the PUC that we've implemented, like the Tribal Assistance Grant that Rob talked about earlier. We've also got Karen Eckersley actually up in Humboldt County now, working with the tribes up there on some of the broadband expansion projects, in addition to other tribes, but she's actually on the ground working directly with a lot of the tribes. And we can see just how important this is right now with the pandemic. But I thought it was a great conference and a good start for something that definitely can continue, and I'm excited to see what's going to be there next year after we've got some of the deployment for all of the things we heard about today from everyone. So I was really excited to participate and really happy to hear all of the involvement from so many different tribes in this area. So thank you, Christina, for putting that together, and for everybody else that participated and the tribal leaders. It was, again, just great to hear directly from them on these issues.
Thank you, Christina. This is Matt Rantanen, and thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I think it was extremely well timed. The talk that I'm hearing on the street after the fact is very relevant to solving some of the problems that they had going into this conference. As all the state representatives, and I'm just going to, volunteer you a few things, volunteer you for a few things in supporting our tribes in California. As you know, we have 109 federally recognized tribes and a few state tribes. They're looking for partners right now. They're looking for support in understanding the space. This is a new space for a lot of folks. They're looking for assistance and guidance, and some of them trust individuals on this call and will be looking for your guidance on this stuff. And so as much as we can be supportive of the efforts they're making and aligning them with the right resources specifically, I think, individually we can all help continue the mission of that conference and the first conference moving forward, because there is an extreme lack of resources in the United States to move this many dollars this fast and build out this much infrastructure this fast with all these tribes. So they're going to be caught in traps and scams and looking for support to get out of that. They're going to want to vet companies with you. They're going to want to understand a process or a contract or something like that better. And as much as we can help them do that, let's do that. Okay. Thank you very much for supporting that effort. We appreciate everything.
Thanks, Matt. And to piggyback on that, that was actually something I was thinking about in our early presentations, that given the infrastructure influx, and COVID, what we've seen, at least on the Tribal Nation Grant Fund, where tribes are trying to develop on reservation, is there's a lot of constraints in terms of being able to do that, just getting materials, workers, and all of that, also in rural communities. So just a +1 on that comment from Matt.
Yeah, I know we're coming up on time, and I think public comment is coming up soon, but Amy, I just wanted to say, Christina, huge kudos to you for the leadership. I know you have so much on your plate, but to step up and provide the leadership to get this event done was fantastic. Matt Rantanen, many ways the brainchild. This is yours as a advisor to the Broadband Council. Phenomenal work on that, and I think it's just one really strong example that a lot of the points that you all have made is the tribal areas are one significant entity that's under resourced from a broadband infrastructure and service standpoint. The format that you put together can serve as a model for other entities to inform them on how to best leverage this just to say flood of federal and state dollars to support broadband, is a crude analogy, but I think it's true, because in order for us to do this, it's going to take the kind of collaboration we see at the Broadband Council, but kicked up to another level. So great job, Christina. I know some of the federal people and some of our partner outside of the state broadband offices were heard about this event, we're looking at it, wanted to replicate that model. So just great job for the impact it's going to have in California, and for the smart practice you've developed that can be shared elsewhere.
Thank you all, Christina. Just echo your leadership. I think I was going to +1 on Scott. I know Scott was fairly new when this was put together, and I think and I was still in the pandemic response team and all that. So I think without all of the leadership and partnership from CPUC and Matthew, and I heard GoBiz, and it sounds like Kana give a great shout out to Maria. This is the teamwork, Christina, that you're talking about, and really it's just the best representation of what state of California can do for our tribal community. So thank you so much all for sharing your thoughts and reflection of that. All right, Sunny, I saw you had a hand earlier. Do you still want to, or that was a fluke?
I put it in a chat.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there's no other comments or questions from the council, I'm gonna go ahead and open up for the public comment period. Oh, I think we do. So if you wanted to do a public comment, please just go ahead and let Jules know so she can get you ready to go. And I do see Joy Sterling have a hands up, but let me, before I go to you, Joy, just really quick, I neglect to, my bad, to make to give a chance to Commissioner Hawk to see if you know you like to say anything when I was introducing you, welcoming you to the council very early on. Just wanted to see if you want to say anything before we open up to open comment.
Thank you. No, I'm really excited to be part of the council and looking forward and hopefully can fill Martha's shoes. I know she's very passionate about this. She will still be very involved, and I believe she's going to be our PUC rep on the advisory committee for the middle mile. So again, I'm just really excited to be part of this. Still coming up to speed on a lot of it, but I've got great resources with our team, Rob and Michael Minkus and everyone. So I feel very lucky to have all of them behind me and hope that I will be able to contribute, and looking forward to working with everyone.
Thank you and welcome to the council. All right, so with this, let's open it up. And Jules, maybe you can help with calling those that are in the list or with hand raise. Just a reminder, public comments, it's limited to 2 minutes per person, but Joy Sterling, it's our advisory member, so I think we can have a little bit of a, let's make sure she has the first chance to speak. So go ahead, Joy.
Thank you so much, and congratulations to the Broadband Council. This is a whole new phase, and I like the idea that everything's going to be brought up +1 or ++1, because the idea here is to get as much done as quickly as possible. And in that spirit, I just wanted to make sure that the members of the Broadband Council are aware that PG&E a few weeks ago issued a press release saying that they were going to underground 10,000 miles of power lines. They do not have a specific timeline for that, but clearly in the spirit of dig once or dig smart, would make all the sense in the world that broadband fiber be laid down at the same time. And I just want to make sure that's on everybody's radar, and that PG&E is encouraged to move faster than they might otherwise be so inclined. Thank you.
Okay, and Bill Allen has a question. If the people who've spoken about the budget could look in the chat, he has a specific question about clarifying whether the budgeted $6 billion will maintain an allocation of $1 billion for last mile infrastructure. I don't know, Amy, Scott, Rob, or Elizabeth, if you'd like to answer that.
Scott, I don't know if you have that readily available. I'm trying to think about this from memory, but go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, no, I don't have that. I was going to actually refer to Rob and see if he could answer that.
Yeah,
Or,
I can jump in. The legislation does call out allocating $1 billion for last mile projects in urban counties, and then it has some detail on that. So yeah, that is included in the legislation. And with regard to middle mile going to both urban and rural, the answer is yes.
And then just also, we put the link to SB 156 in the chat. So when we post you can grab it now, or when we post the meeting information, it'll be up there as well. Mr. Pacheco.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Jorge Pacheco Jr. I am a former teacher of 8 years from Santa Clara County, and now a digital equity specialist in Santa Clara County. My goal is to close the digital divide for my county, and I'm working out of the community health partnership. So I'm really excited to unite the healthcare community and our educational community and everybody from local agencies to our public and private partnerships to help make this happen. And I just really wanted to congratulate all of you for entering this new phase in this project since the passage of SB 156. I really want to advocate, of course, to make sure that public broadband is a massive priority for all of our communities that really need that access for affordable plans, especially when the EBB plan does eventually run out. We want to make sure that these community members continue to have access to these affordable plans. And so public broadband will be that way to make it happen. And I'm really excited to work with many of you to make this happen for our local communities. Thanks again. And Jules, I sent you a question, and I don't know if that can be asked to somebody from the council.
I'm not sure if I see, you can go ahead and ask it right now. We do need to limit time though, so.
Yes, I just wanted to know if school districts or county offices of education could access the loan loss reserve from SB 156. I was just wondering about that.
If we don't know, what we can do is we'll have somebody get back to you. We spoke via email before. So Mr. Jacobson is next. You're muted.
Hello. Nope,
Yes,
or unmuted
there you
now.
go.
I'm speaking to you from Arizona on Viasat satellite. It's a very unsuccessful experiment, but I wanted to say how proud I was of everything that you're doing there. I was the first principal consultant for information and telecom policy for the California legislature back in the 1980s when we passed the MORE Act, which is actually the foundation of the work that you're doing today. One thing we discovered was that for technologies to be taken up in mass, the kind of thing that you're trying to do now in California, it's good to have services that go along with them. And you're lucky to have those because the state has had time to adapt itself to the new technologies. But one thing I wanted to talk about was a project I was talking to GoBiz about, and then they went through their massive reorganization and it got lost. And it had to do with using the broadband system to work on interregional communications to better integrate the various regions of California with another. And I would still like to pursue that policy with someone from GoBiz and see if we can actually make it into ancillary legislation or simply a project perhaps that's paid for by the state to complement the work that you're doing in terms of building the basic infrastructure.
So would it be possible for you to put a contact email in the chat for Mr. Jacobson?
I sent a lot of documents over before the meeting, and those have a lot of the information that I would convey.
Jules put his email in the chat. For Mr.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
that will do it.
David
Okay.
Griffith wanted to know about the possibility of obtaining a map where the middle mile is planned for Caltrans and so forth, and who decides where things will go. Scott, did you or Amy want to talk more about the Middle Mile Committee?
I think it's
I'm sorry, Jules, hold on. I couldn't hear who's asked a question if the individual can actually present themselves because it's a public comment period.
David Griffith.
Okay, I can talk if it's okay. Yeah, I was wondering where the middle mile is going to go exactly. Are there maps available? And who decides where it is going to, where the middle mile will be constructed?
Amy, are you going to answer that, or would you like me to take a shot? Yeah, great question, Mr. Griffith. SB 156 outlines the project or the process for how locations are going to be determined. CPUC is going to work in collaboration with the Department of Technology, Office of Broadband, and the third-party administrator on the locations. Prior to locations being decided, there will be a public comment process where CPUC will take in information from, that'll be open to a number of entities. So I encourage, if you have an interest in providing, comment maps on where to go, there are, I don't believe, are any constraints on who can factor into that. And then once public comment is, and actually, let me say this, Rob, I don't want to talk too much about a process that you and CPUC are going to be running, but do you have anything else to add about the decision-making process and the ability for the public to make comment on that?
I was going to say that the map is, I think we've got that available on ArcGIS online, so people can go and look at that. We're in the process of working with Caltrans on, providing that in a format that Caltrans can use in terms of road miles. And as I said earlier, the proposed route was based on state highways and linking those to census designated places with unserved households. I expect that some of that will be modified as we find census designated places that are not on state highways, and we may need to use county roads or local roads. So, bottom line is we do have that map available, and we can put that link up.
Perfect. If you could put that link in the chat, that would be wonderful.
Rob?
And go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just going to say, Rob, could you also just real quickly recap the public comment process as it relates to the middle mile?
Oh, certainly. So we'll be publishing the list of middle mile locations under the broadband proceeding, which is under Commissioner Guzman Aceves, and I can put that proceeding number up. And we have 90 days to provide that list of middle mile locations to Department of Technology. So that would be probably by mid-October, I think October 20th. And during that period where we've published that list, we'll be accepting public comment. So people have a chance to look at it and provide feedback.
And then Cole has been patiently waiting with his hand up.
Thank you about that. I guess mine's a follow-up for Supervisor Griffith. In essence, you answered one of the questions, which was the where. I guess the follow-up question would be, can we have an estimated timeline onto when we could expect feasibly that there would be any sort of decision made to plan for construction, in the mind that there's a lot of other federal dollars that are available, like the broadband infrastructure grant, for example. And so I guess the question would be the timelines, that then we could also figure out how we could go for broadband infrastructure or NTIA grants that would then deal with the last mile. So that's one thing that I would hope there would be a lot of communication on, is timelines, so we can then prepare additional last mile infrastructure grant applications out there with a lot of the Fed dollars. Thank you.
Hey, Cole, I would just say, just at a high level, that it's a very relevant question. Literally the Middle Mile Advisory Committee is going to have its first meeting on the 18th. So there'll be some information about that. We still are in the process of retaining the third-party administrator that's going to have a significant role in all of this. And in addition to the initial maps, the CPUC's got the public comment process to solicit feedback. So the nature of the finding is that this has to happen pretty fast, like within by 2026. I know that the entire statewide project needs to be completed, but things there's going to be an expedited process on this. It's just things are highly fluid, and check in with us as we go along. Okay.
And then Jackie. Jackie, did we lose you?
Oh, I just put a question into the chat. Is the Middle Mile Advisory Committee body subject to bag leaking, so that those would be public open meetings with agendas and public comment periods?
Yes, they will be. And if you're on the Broadband Council stakeholder list, we're going to use the same stakeholder list. So we'll alert everybody when agendas posted and when meetings are scheduled.
Okay, and Jules, are there any other public members who will sign up to make public comments?
It does not look like there is.
Okay, and thank you for, Rob just put some link. And then also I was going to say for Jacqueline's question, there was a link provided in the chat, probably is now like 50 low above. There's a website specifically about the Middle Mile Advisory Committee. So feel free to take a look at that website as well. Maybe Joyce, if you don't mind, just re-put that link so folks can get information to that. Are there last chance before I close the public comment period? All right, let's go ahead and close it. And back to the council member. We have a few minutes before we wrap. Just wanted to give a final opportunity to see if there are any other comments want to be made by the council member before we close out. I heard what Christina said, maybe this time is a sleepy time right after lunch. So one thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to stick to the cadence of the day. So Wednesdays, it's ended up to be the better date of the week as we schedule these. But I think we'll go ahead and have our staff check in with you afterward to see if you prefer to have a time slot that it's maybe in the morning, not early in the morning, for example, like 10 to 12 instead of 1 to 3. So you either get really hungry or you get really sleepy on this meeting. So we're happy to make those adjustments. Just last call. Any other comments?
Just briefly, there was a note in, okay, Rob already answered it in the chat. So I was just going to make sure we got that answered, but he did it already. So thank you. Yeah, the loan loss is in a different proceeding in the CAS.
Got it. Okay, well then, thank you so much. All of the council members, and welcome our new council member. I should have said that sounds like Michael Flores. Are you going to be the new rep representing Secretary Ross moving forward?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. I should have had given a chance for you to introduce yourself. I'm sorry we.
Well, that's quite all right.
Do you want to say a few words to introduce yourself?
No, appreciate the opportunity to work with all of you folks. It's tremendous work that you're trying to accomplish here, and I look forward to moving in a successful direction with all of you. So look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And once again, just thank you to our advisory members, Robert and Matthew, Joy, Michael, and Sturgeon. So thank you guys I saw many of you are sitting through the entire meeting with us. Thank you for your continued support and all that and all of the great work. And the council members, until next time, please take care of yourself, stay safe, and we will see you on October 27th.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the members, public members participating. Take care.
Everyone, thank you.
Bye, thank you.